the Special Emphasis Program Manager for the Asian American Pacific Islander Employment Group. And thank you all for joining us today to help celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And the theme for this year's celebration is Walk Together, Embrace Differences, and Build Legacies. And as public service agencies, we strive to reach and impact communities and work together to build those legacies. We have two wonderful speakers here with us today who are pillars of the Chicagoland AAPI community. We have Linda Yu from ABC 7, and we also have Dennis Mondero from the Chinese Mutual Aid Association. They've done so much work with the AAPI community here in Chicago. But before we hear from our speakers, I'd like to introduce our acting regional counsel, Tom Kaplan, for some opening remarks.
Welcome everyone, and thank you, Charmaine. Welcome to the celebration of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Today we're coming to the end of this month-long celebration. The month of May was chosen back in 1992 to commemorate the first Japanese immigration to the United States on May 7, 1843. It's also to mark the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10, 1869. The majority of the workers who laid the tracks, of course, were Chinese immigrants. Our theme, as Charlene mentioned, this year is Walk Together, Embrace Differences, Build Legacies. Some people would arbitrarily draw circles around whole groups of people that are different than them, even blame them for things that are entirely out of their control. We hear that more and more frequently these days. However, we understand the importance of unity and inclusion. At events like this one, it's important to honor the things that make us different, that we commemorate the value of things that also make us unique. In that vein, I'd like to read an excerpt from Kosel Kiev's poem. It's called Unite Us. Kosel was born in a refugee camp in Thailand and fled with his family to the U.S. in 1981. As a teenager, he was in a gang fight, was arrested, charged as an adult, and served 14 years. And although a permanent resident, he was deported to Cambodia, a country he had never seen. He wrote this poem, which I think really speaks to all of us. It's outstanding. I want to share with you here today an excerpt. It's called Unite Us. It will be an uphill battle, I will tell you, a battle that must be taken all the way to Capitol Hill. So as we prepare ourselves for such warfare, let us stand fast. Let us equip our hearts and fortify our spirits with love, compassion, kindness, and empathy. Let us not tangle ourselves with the thorns of bitterness and hatred, but let each of our voices be raised aloud in unity and perseverance, and know that we shall overcome any obstacle placed before us, and our voices shall be heard, not just here, but the world over. That we as a human race shall not be divided by inequality of race, wealth, color, or creed, but united and bound by the same idea that we are one huge family, living under the same starry sky with the same hopes, fears, and dreams. This I decree to all my brothers and sisters. So let freedom ring, like Martin Luther King said. When he first stood and spoke, he had a dream. I tell you, his dream is still unfolding, still taking shape within each of our lives as we continue to struggle with our own sense of identity, our own sense of place and belonging. To take our rightful place as heirs to this world we call Earth and set right the wrongs of humanity. Unite us, my mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, and descendants of old and new. Let us rebuild this divided bridge of injustice and rededicate our lives to reunite as a global community. And let those who will surely come after us, after we are dead and gone, let us hear them say, there was a time when we came together as one. Now it's time to hear from our guest speakers, both of whom are highly accomplished and respected members of Chicago's Asian American community. We are pleased to have Emmy-winning ABC 7 anchor Linda Yu with us here today. Linda serves on the board of the Juvenile Protective Association and also chairs the advisory board for the Chinese American Service League. Following Linda, we will hear from the executive director of Chinese Mutual Aid Association, Dennis Mondero. This nonprofit agency provides social services to a diverse immigrant community in Chicago's uptown neighborhood. We were just talking a little bit before the presentation. We live fairly close to each other, and he was talking about having a fantastic 5K run in the neighborhood. And for those of you that are familiar with dim sum, it's one of my favorite things. The run was proposed to be called the Dim Sum and Then Some. So I think that's a fantastic title. I look forward to that. Not many things motivate me to run, but I think that one will. Dennis is a former City of Chicago Deputy Building Commissioner and Deputy Chief of Staff at the CTA. Please help me welcome Linda Yu and Dennis Mondero.
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Good morning.
It's great to see all of you this morning. I didn't quite know what to expect in terms of audience today, and I'm great to see that it's an audience of huge diversity, which is fantastic, that you come and you recognize Asian American Pacific Islander Month. This is a time that is very important to me because I've worked very hard over these many years here in Chicago to see it publicized more, to see more people involved in it. I want to go back 37 years. That was when I first moved to Chicago to work in Channel 5 then. Many of you in this room were not born yet. Most of you were probably in elementary school. Maybe a few of you are around my age now, but it's been a long time that I've been here in Chicago. And when I first came, my first day on the air was, I did the news at 4:30, I think, yeah, 4:30 back then, on Channel 5 that first day. And when I got off the air, I walked into the newsroom and all of the phones were ringing. And back then, the phones still had little lights that would light up. Do you remember? Some of you remember. Yeah. So they would light up, and all of my new colleagues were answering the phones and looking up at me, kind of irritated. And finally, one of the producers walked up to me and said, all these phone calls are because of you. I said, did I do something wrong? Did I say something awful? You know, I felt terrible. And she says, no, everybody's asking, what is she? Wow. So I said, female? Last I checked. You know, what? You know, I don't understand. And somebody else said, yeah, what are you? And it finally dawned on me, because there had never been an Asian American on the air in Chicago before me. And people just wondered. And I said, I'm Chinese. And they went, oh, okay, and went back to answering the phones. And I discovered that day that it was not a matter of anybody resenting that I was here. They were just curious. They had never seen an Asian American on television, on the television news here in Chicago, and it was a very curious thing. So I felt like, and that was part of the reason I came to Chicago also, when the people at management at Channel 5 had first wanted to hire me, and found out there had never been one, and I was very pleased that they were ready to hire one. So I thought, oh good, progress. For 10 years, nobody hired another one. I thought, okay, what did I do wrong? There hasn't been another one. But we have made progress, at least in the media. We've made a great deal of progress because our station, ABC7 now, when I left after 5 years and went to ABC7, our station now has 5 Asian Americans on the air. 4 in news, that would be me, Judy Sue, who does the early morning news, Robbie Bajwal, who does the weekend news, and Eric Hong, who's a reporter for us for our prime time shows, and Ji-Suk Yi, who is one of the hosts on Windy City Live. So we are very, very proud of that in front of the camera as well as behind the camera, we believe we have the most number of Asian Americans at Channel 7 working there. The other stations all do have somebody also represented on the air, and so we are very proud of that kind of progress that we have made. Pankaj was telling me that I have been here before, and we were trying to remember how long ago that was, and we think it was 19 years ago, back in 1997. How many of you were here back then? Ah! Oh, great. Do you remember me coming? But that was a long time ago. It's great to see all of you here today. So, talking a little bit more about the progress. One of the important things that developed after I had been in Chicago for a few years was that the various Asian organizations, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Vietnamese, the Hmong, the Thai, finally all decided, instead of all being separate, and that really plays to one of today's themes, that is walking together. Instead of all being separate, and I knew how separate they were because since I was the only one, every single one of them would ask me to come speak. And so I was constantly going to this group and this individual groups. And the groups all got together and we met and we decided to form the Asian American Coalition. And the first event that we held was in a Polish restaurant. And we were absolutely surprised because that was an election year. And this had never happened before whenever any of the individual organizations had invited the political candidates to come and speak to us. That year, because there was a coalition of all of the groups, and back then maybe there were 8 or 9, I can't remember exactly how many, there were maybe 8 or 9 had gotten together. That group now is like around 20 different Asian ethnic groups all together. But every candidate for alderman that year, every candidate for state office that year, there were candidates for US Senate that year also, and every single one of them came to that dinner to speak to us or to make an appearance. And we all learned a huge lesson then, and that was all about walking together. That coalition has gone on now over the years. The dinner every year, up to 2,000 people attend that, and every candidate, every politician we asked to come comes to listen to us or to talk to us or to have a forum with us as part of that day. So there's progress on that score. One of the things that's so important to many Asians now and many of us who work in the community is that this November is going to be a very important election for us too. Right now, we have an Asian American in Chicago City Council, Alderman Amaya Pawar. But there are 4 candidates who will be on the ballot in November, and if all of them are elected, that will be the very first time in Illinois that there will be an Asian American at every level of government, every level of elected office. In the Metropolitan Water District is Josina Morita. For the Illinois General Assembly is Teresa Ma. She's running in November. She won the Democratic primary. She is unopposed in the November election, so we have great hope for that one. Also in Congress, Raja Krishnamurthy. I don't know if any of you have seen his very cute commercials that are on television where people go, Krish, how do you say your name? And he says, just call me Raja. You know? But he's absolutely marvelous and doesn't expect anybody to be able to say Krishnamurthy. Right? But just call him Raja. And then from the seat that she's leaving, that Raja's running for the U.S. Senate, is Tammy Duckworth. And so to us, this is a huge, huge election year, that if all of them win their posts, and along with Alderman Pawar, we will have 5 elected Asian Americans, and that will represent every single level of government in this state. So progress there too, so that's really important to us. In business, looking at some statistics, 5.8% of the population in the United States is Asian American. What percentage do we make up of CEOs in this country? Are we close to 5.8%? Are we way past it? Are we at 10%? We're at 2%. And in upper level management, I'm sorry I didn't get all the numbers for that, but we are not very high in that. We still have a lot of progress to make in that score. One of the nice things though, of the 5 top Asian American CEOs, 3 of them are heading companies such as Microsoft, PepsiCo, MasterCard. So the quality of it, we are very pleased with, but we know that there's still a great deal of work to do on that too. So where do we go from there? I would hope that we will continue to make that kind of progress. I would hope that we will continue to work hard to walk together to make that kind of progress. And I hope that in the 19 years from now, when I go tottering back to talk to you again, that we can talk about a huge, huge amount of progress. So, but to me, a huge amount of progress is seeing the diversity that I see here in this room and the recognition that all of you are making toward recognizing Asian American Pacific Islander Month. I have a few minutes now to take some questions. If any of you would like to ask me any? Anybody? You can ask me about Jerry Taft too, and yes, he is exactly the way he is. Even off camera. Nobody?
Where's Ron Major's retirement party?
Oh, Ron Major's, the retirement that went on and on and on. It went on the air, and it went on behind the scenes too. TV stations used to have a lot of money. The last big party I remember was when Joel Daly, who was my co-anchor for many years, when he retired, and we had a big party for him. We don't have much money these days. I think all businesses understand that too, right? And so it was a series of smaller ones. And that was really nice for Ron. But people have come up to me and said, that's a very sad thing that Ron Major's retired. And I say, it is not sad at all, because Ron is so happy. And so I'm very pleased for him. He's been breeding racehorses for a long time. And he's been getting tired because in the morning, he told me, in the mornings before he came to work all the time, he would be doing the books. He would be worrying about the health of the horses. He would be doing, you know, the million and one things that have to do with running a business. And he would be doing all of that before coming to work. So he's looking forward to being able to have more time devoted to that. And it's something that he absolutely loves. So it's not a sad thing. It's a very happy thing for him too. So anyway. Anybody else? Yes.
During your career, did you get offers to accept a position in national football?
Yeah, I did. I learned, I worked in San Francisco for 3.5 years before I came here. And when I left to come to Chicago, because it was a bigger market, because also it was a chance to be the first Asian American here, one of my big regrets was that it had taken me a number of years to really develop my contacts for stories and really understand and know the community. It's hard to just land in a city and become an expert for whatever story you're doing. And so I really felt like that I was just beginning to make that kind of progress in San Francisco. So when I came to Chicago, and the same thing happened after a few years, I thought to myself, no, I think I need to settle down and really develop and plant myself in a community. Because one of the issues, one of the problems with going to network, as wonderful as that is when you first go to network, say as a correspondent, you do get flown into some place to cover a story that day. You're supposed to be the instant expert, and then you do it on the air. And that began to bother me. It's wonderful for a lot of people, and you know, they get help from the bureaus that are in those cities, or there are producers who've been, you know, researching the story. But as the correspondent, when you fly in, you just boom, you're there, you do that. Maybe it's 1 or 2 days if you're lucky. If it's breaking news, it's 2 hours later, and you're on the air. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to settle down, and I also wanted to have a family. And I did. I had 2 fabulous children. I call them adult children now because they're like this. You know, my son likes to put his arm out, and mom comes right to that. So, but I've been very happy that I decided to spend my career here in Chicago, because Chicago has been very good to me. It's been great. Anybody else? Yes.
Do you see any discrimination in the way that the Asian American community interacts with the larger community in the Chicago area, and how's the progress on that front?
I think there will always be, as long as people look at color of skin. And it's almost impossible not to look at color of skin. But Asians really feel that so many times, no matter how long we've been here, somebody will still look at us and somebody will still say, you're a foreigner. Including those who have been born in this country, including those who may have been 2nd or 3rd generation in this country, because they'll look at us, they'll look at the color of our skin, they'll look at the color of our hair, you know, and still see us as foreigners. And as long as that happens, and I'm not saying that that's an awful thing, I wish it didn't happen, but it's human nature. I also do understand that, you know. I can't stop myself from doing that and seeing somebody and thinking to myself, oh, I wonder what country they come from or where their country of origin is. You know. My way of looking at it may be a little different, because I'm thinking, isn't that great? Because we are, what do they say? We're no longer a melting pot, we're more a salad bowl. All right, and I think there's a richness to that. I love to make salad that has, you know, 19 ingredients in it, you know, so I don't have a problem with that. But I think that Um, Prejudices and racism dies hard, as I'm sure many people in this room understand. And it will still exist. I hope that we are making progress. In this city, it is very, very disturbing to me. Even in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the studies that have come out that show that this is still the most segregated city in this country. And when you look at the numbers of, when you look at the unemployment numbers on the south side compared to the unemployment numbers on the north side, when you look at the incarceration rates for people from the south side compared to those on the north side, those kinds of numbers are heartbreaking. And that's something that, my hope is that with our diversity, with those who care, that we can slowly do something about that. I hope so. Do we experience it? Prejudices die hard. I always think about how long it takes for prejudices to go away. When I was a little girl, when I first came to the United States, we lived in Philadelphia. My father was already in the States, had already been here for a couple of years studying. And it was while he was here that the communists came into China, and that was the reason we ended up in the United States. My father said, it's not going to be like other times in China when there's just upheaval, a change of government, and then we're going to be all right again. He understood this time when the communists and Mao Zedong came through that it was going to be different and would be very bad for our family, because my father was a Protestant minister, and on my mother's side we are royalty. My grandmother was to be the next Empress of China, so I'm a princess. Actually, when I learned that, they call me Empress. So my dad's real feeling was that his degrees, his college degree, his doctorate degree, his divinity degree that he got in China didn't count in the United States. So he wanted to do them all over again because education is such an important thing to Asians. So Dad finished getting his divinity degree in Philadelphia and said, okay, I gotta go back and get my college degree. And it was a Christian college in Marion, Indiana. And that's the middle of the state of Indiana. And at the time, we did not realize how many years before the last public lynching of an African American happened outside of Marion, Indiana. It had been many, many years, I think it was in the 30s. But prejudices die hard. And people who were different were still looked upon with curiosity, with fear, with some trepidation. So my father drove down from Philadelphia looking for a home, a place for my mother, my older sister, and me. And he looked and looked and looked, and no one, everyone said no one would rent to us. And they were, during that time, pretty open about it. No, I don't know what you are, and so I won't rent to you. And we ended up in a little town called Fairmount, Indiana, about 20 minutes outside of Marion, only because my dad was in a gas station, not knowing what to do, filling up the gas in the car, ready to drive back to Philadelphia. And the gas station attendant said to my dad, what are you? What are you doing here? And Dad said, I'm going to go to college here, and I'm trying to find a home for my family. And the guy was just curious. He didn't say, oh, get out of here. He didn't say, I don't have a home for you. He didn't say anything. He just wanted to know what this Chinese, and he didn't know whether he was Chinese or what, but just that he was different. He didn't know. And luckily for us, there was a woman who was also filling gas at the station at the same time. And she heard what was going on. And she walked up to my father and said, I don't live in Marion. I live in Fairmount outside, but I'll rent to you. And so we ended up, she had a duplex, upstairs and downstairs. We ended up renting the downstairs. And till the day she died, she was my grandma dueling. So it was many years later that I learned about that lynching and realized all those years had gone by. But racism and fear and all those things die hard. It takes a long, long time for those to go away. I've been back to Marion and to Fairfield now, welcomed with open arms. You know, it's not an issue. But back then, it still was. Even 25 years, after that what you can have it. Anybody else real quick? Okay, so it's been great to talk to you guys. Sorry I have to run.
Present a certificate of appreciation. It just says to Linda you, it doesn't say to Princess Linda. We can fix that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Really
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. This is so nice. Thank you all very
Thank you
much.
again.
Okay.
We
Thanks.
appreciate you spending the morning out with us.
Thanks. And I'm sorry that I have to get going. Oh, talking about, I forgot, I was going to mention to you guys, because it was something else I didn't have time to talk about wanting to know how to get ahead, you know, in Western companies and stuff. I wrote a book. We can't read it, or I can't, because it's in Chinese. It's only for sale in China. Isn't that cool? I wrote it in English. And then it took the publisher in China a good part of a year to get it translated, and all the pictures and all that stuff for them to do. But I'm very proud of that fact and realized that everywhere, because since word got out about this here, is people have said you need to expand on that and do it for the United States too, so that Asian Americans here can have some suggestions on how to get this. Anyway.
We'll be looking forward to that.
Okay. All right, nice to meet all of you.
Now let's welcome Dennis Mondero from the Chinese Mutual Aid.
Thank you, Charmaine. It's unfair that I have to go after a legend. If anyone wants to trade places, come on. Thank you, Regional Administrator or Kaplan, Dennis Mondero. It's my name. I'm the Executive Director of Chinese Mutual Aid Association. And as I look out, and I understand that the audience is a lot of folks from EPA and some folks from HUD. And as a former staff person in government myself, I look out among friends, and I want to thank you for all of the hard work and effort, because we know that the electeds get all the credit, and all the folks that I'm talking to are the folks that get everything done. I want to also acknowledge someone who has been a major leader in the Asian American community. I know was a leader here at EPA, Sandra Otaka, who was in your Office of Regional Counsel, and truly is one of the backbones of the local Chicago community. She was the first Asian American to be appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court to be a judge here in Illinois. She was truly trailblazer, and she was EPA all the way. So you have a strong lineage here. For those in the audience that may be from HUD, I had the honor of being in DC for a couple days last week, and I had lunch with Nani Coloretti on Thursday, who is Deputy Secretary for HUD. So just wanted to give those little touch points. So who am I and why the heck am I talking to you? Well, I'm an immigrant kid. I was born in the Philippines, and I came to the United States with my family at the age of 3. We moved to uptown in Edgewater neighborhood of Chicago in 1971. And my parents sacrificed everything to achieve their American dream, and I can say proudly that they did. And why did I say they sacrificed? Well, my mom was a dentist in the Philippines, and my dad was a mechanical engineer, and they came to the U.S. just for an opportunity for my sister and I to have an education and to have that opportunity that we all know about for the American dream. And so my mom was a dentist, and she sacrificed and resigned herself to be a dental assistant. My dad was a mechanical engineer, and he became a mechanic, right? And we went from a home in the Philippines to a studio apartment at Balmoral and Kenmore. I went to Brenneman Elementary up there, and it was a very, as a little kid, I was a latchkey kid actually going to school, and who knew that at, like first grade, like that, today my parents would probably be arrested for neglect, going off, we worked hard. My parents made sure that my sister and I worked hard. We both went to UI in Champaign, My sister wanted to get her MBA at University of Chicago. I went and got my law degree. And actually, I got it at Indiana University. I was there on scholarship, and to address the question that gentleman back asked about discrimination, one of the early times in which I felt that discrimination was that, for instance, my very first day at IU Bloomington, like first kid in my family to go to law school, and I walk out on the front steps, and a pickup truck drives by with 4 local young men who were from the townies, so like the locals from the town, and they saw me and they yelled out to me, "Go home, chink, or we'll make you go home," right? And it was very and all I could yell was, "I'm not even Chinese," right? And I then went on, as I went to law school, and I learned, kind of alluding to what Linda had seen in Marion, Indiana. There were certain bars that I could not go to because I was not white in the greater Bloomington area. And it was just a really weird thing. Like some of my friends were like, "No, you're not allowed to go there," because what I didn't realize was that the Ku Klux Klan had such a strong presence, and it's like it's the next state over, and it's as a kid growing up in Chicago, I was just astounded that was still something prevalent not so very long ago. So anyway, for me in my career, I eventually started practicing law. I was practicing commercial real estate, and from that time, I ended up getting asked to join the city of Chicago, where as Administrator Kaplan mentioned, I became Deputy Building Commissioner for the city. I also became Deputy Chief of Staff at CTA, so if you ride the CTA, a couple of things, my public-facing things that I was able to do, and I can say that if it weren't for me, that I was able to advance the ball a lot more. You ride the trains and you use the train tracker system. We didn't have it when I was there, and when the mayor moved me over, we were getting compliments for a bus tracker that was on the phones, but everyone's like, "When are you dummies going to get train tracker?" And then I asked our rail staff, and they're like, "Oh, you got $20 million laying around, Mondero?" And I'm like, "$20 million? Why is it going to cost so much?" And I learned that you would have had to retrofit every train car, every rail car with GPS, and you would have to put a signaling system in the subways and throughout the system. And I'm like, okay, I don't got $20 million, and really, like when we have a really bad Chicago winter and you see all the potholes on the streets of Chicago, well, that's what the rail system is like. So naturally, our infrastructure people, they don't care about things like train tracker. They just want to fix rail ties and ballast because there's such limited money that comes in that they're worried about public safety, and they're worried about that next derailment. And so I was in our West Loop Control Center one day, and it's a room probably twice as big as this, and on three of the walls there was a TV screen, so every security camera in the system feeds into cameras, and then on one giant wall there is a electronic image of the CTA rail system, and there were blinking red lights, and then the supervisor's like, "Hey, operator 101, why are you still at Belmont? Why aren't you over at Addison yet?" And I'm like, "Wait, I thought we didn't have GPS." And they're like, "Yeah, that's the electric signaling system, so we kind of know where they are." I'm like, "You kind of know? Well then, let's kind of tell people that." So if you notice that the train tracker is called estimated arrival time, I'm like, let's call it beta and let's do blah blah blah. And so we brought train tracker to the system for $100,000. All we had to do was enhance our website and create the algorithms. And so that's one of the public-facing things that I did for my time at CTA. In terms of Asian American community, what I'm proud of is that some of the folks that Linda knows, on my first week at CTA, they started calling me, "Yo, Mondero, you're over at CTA now? And well, can you get us a new rail station at Chinatown?" And I'm like, "Oh, why do you need a new rail station?" And what I didn't know was that a truck driver had been driving on 9094, had an epileptic seizure, and was going on the off-ramp going northbound, and crashed headfirst into the entrance of the station. So the doors were like boarded up, the escalator was broken, the elevator was broken, it was all like down, like it was partially open for over a year. And they were wondering when the heck that would be restored. So when I asked our rail people again, and they said, well, we're waiting to like settle up with the insurance company for the truck driver, and when that $1 million payout comes in, we'll just restore the stuff. And then so when I told the folks in Chinatown that, they were like, that's not good enough, can't you get like something better? And so the importance of having diversity, as that is the theme of our conversation, is that it's important to have people that represent our cross-section of the community. And unfortunately, I was the second highest ranking Asian in the Daley administration. When I looked around, when I was on the 5th floor, man, there was no one else. I mean, there was me and one other guy that was Asian on the entire 5th floor. The mayor's in the middle, the chief of staff in one corner, and I had the other corner office, and as I like to say, he was the head, and I was the tail getting my ass whooped. Right. but it's important to have people from all walks of life in the room so that we can, like, explain why we need something. And so, because I was the number 3 guy at CTA, unabashedly, I kept pushing for the Red Line station to be put there, not just the $1 million to fix the front door and the elevator, but eventually we got $25 million, and I was able to get a full restoration. Actually, the folks in the Chinatown Square Mall area were like, "Hey, can you get like an entrance on Archer?" I'm like, "Let me see what I can do." And so I really feel proud that when I see the development of Chinatown Square Mall, that I feel like I have a little something to do with it. And again, it's important for our community to have all voices heard so that we can look and push that. So what am I doing now? Well, from my time in the government, I realized that Asians don't have a voice. And there are so many strong organizations in the nonprofit community that are representing, whether it's the gay and lesbian community, whether it's the African American community, the Jewish community, the Hispanic community, that are nonprofits representing Asian Americans. We weren't really taking it to that next level. So that's what I'm trying to do as Executive Director of Chinese Mutual Aid Associations. In terms of what we do, my agency provides programs for youth, programs for adults. We teach English as a second language. My agency is the second largest recipient of state funds behind the community colleges of Chicago, because we actually take that money and we share it with others, such as the Ethiopian Association, the Polish Association, American by Values, which is a Russian organization, and we are helping new immigrants learn English, and then we're helping them get jobs. We also have various senior programs. What we started doing last couple summers ago was a thing called Play Streets, where we like pick a street in the uptown area, and we have ad hoc basketball. And the very first time we did it, we had like about 100 kids. It was about 80%, 90% Asian, 10% other, predominantly African American. And then the second time we did it was like 90% African American, 10% Asian. And then we've been trying to do it where can we get like a mixture and a great equal mixture, so that blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, we can all like protest, right? Because when 5-year-old, 10-year-old kids can hang out and they can talk on the basketball court and get along, and then that's where prejudices break down, because then they can build that relationship. And so that's a really important program that we do. In terms of what our community, the Asian American community, what we're hoping to do, well, is to continue to make those inroads. So for example, 2 weeks ago, I was in Springfield and trying to push for, I was there with other Asian American leaders, trying to push for a state budget. And this is something that, whether you're Asian or not, or this is something I wanted to make sure that I addressed with everyone, is that we're now about to enter into our 12th month of the state's fiscal year 16, which began July of last year with no state budget. And so if you for example, Catholic Charities, which is one of the largest nonprofit organizations in the state, they've been doing work for the last year, and they haven't been getting paid up to more than $30 million, right? So my agency, I haven't been paid, not $30 million, I wish, but I haven't been paid more than $500,000, right? And so that's significant because, for instance, I laid off staff in December. I actually personally stopped paying myself for 6 months until my board of directors made me, in fact, one of my board members is sitting right there, but my board made me restart my salary. But I wanted to make sure that our staff and our community knew that this budget impasse between the speaker, the governor, the four tops, our legislative leaders, this is a big deal. We are in a major predicament that if this continues on, my fear is that the nonprofit sector for the entire state, and that's big agencies and small agencies, will be irreparably harmed for the next 2 generations. And so I ask you to talk about this among your friends and family, and to those who are concerned, if you would do me the favor of picking up the phone and calling your legislator and telling them, please, to make a deal happen. Because it is irresponsible for agencies such as mine, such as Catholic Charities, such as Easter Seals, such as ADES McKinley, to be doing services. We have a social contract. The state of Illinois has contracted away a lot of services that it could be doing itself and having workers do, and contracted it to nonprofit organizations. And they haven't. They're making us still do the work, but they're not paying us for the work. And so, unfortunately, I wish Linda was here to hear it. Linda, you report on this every day, right? And but it's important for all of us to come together and push them on that. I guess that's my little spiel. And if anyone has questions, I'm probably not as interesting as Linda, but I thank you for your time. Yes. So the question was what other services we do, and so we do have a mentoring program. So our youth program, every day we have an after-school homework help program. We have about 100 kids. These children are, 95% of them are immigrants from not only China, but, and I should have said this before, Chinese mutual aid it's a misnomer because it represents Chinese immigrants, but it's more than that. When I went to when I became executive director about 3 years ago, I met with local elected officials up on the north side, and I'm like, should I change our name to Asian Mutual Aid or Chicago Mutual Aid? And folks are like, don't change your name. You guys have the best reputation. Your people are awesome, blah, 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 right? So our kids that we service are from Vietnam, China, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Pakistan. So it spans a wide gamut. 95% are immigrants. 95% are from families that are at the poverty level. So we're really my team is doing what I think is really God's work. The program that you're alluding to, we have a teen mentoring program called Young Women Warriors, where we have female professionals. In fact, our board president, who's an architect, got involved with our agency because of mentoring teen girls. And so last week, Friday, in fact, my daughter is now being menteed. They went rock climbing, and they do different activities, but they do things like rock climbing, but they'll also do things like talking about dating and how to say no, and how to say no to drugs, and it's really programmed. The programming is driven by the girls, and we try to have mentors for them. And so, again, apart from calling legislators, I guess I was really bad on my call to action, because if anyone wants to volunteer, agencies like mine cannot succeed well without a steady flow of really passionate volunteers who are willing to give your time back. And so if anyone is willing to do that, then I would love to have you there. The other thing I also wanted to mention before the questions is that when I was in Springfield 2 weeks ago, it was great, but not great. And why I say that is that for the very first time ever, Teresa Ma, the woman that Linda mentioned, who's going to be the very first Asian American state representative, she was down there with us at a rally. But we met with the governor and Speaker Madigan, and that was, I think, the very first time that Asian leaders ever were in the room with them. Now, some of my fellow folks that were in the room, they were came away really disappointed because it's like we couldn't get them to agree to a budget. I'm like, at least we're in the discussion finally, because for many years I'd go down to Springfield. I went down for the inauguration, the governor's inauguration last year, and friends of mine, black, white, Hispanic, were like, "What are you doing here?" It's like, what? Like we can't come down? And so it's important for our community to finally at least have a voice, just so that we can.
May I have your attention, please? A fire has been reported in another area of the building. You are in a safe area. Please stay in your work area and await further instructions. Do not use the elevators. May I have your attention, please? A fire has been reported in another area of the building. You are in a safe area. Please stay in your work area and await further instructions. Do not use the elevators.
Okay, I think it's done.
Yeah. Any other questions?
When do you realistically see a budget getting passed?
Gosh, I kind of thought it was going to be 5 months ago, so I was completely wrong, I guess. The sad thing is that today is a key day, because today is the last day of the spring legislative session. And so, Speaker, you may have seen, while most of us were off Memorial Day weekend, the House and Senate were both still in session Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And so today, if they don't come up with a budget, they're off for summer school, right? Or for summer vacation, right? So they don't do anything for the next 3 months, and then they come back in the fall. And unfortunately, particularly for the House, most of the House members are up for re-election in the fall. And so everyone kind of gets into re-election mode, and they're not going to try and do anything about pushing for a budget. So it could potentially happen today, and hopefully we leave here and I'll be dancing. But I fear that it may not happen until after November and maybe even December or January, which would really be a shame. We are the only, there were 2 states that hadn't arrived at the state budget. It was also Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania just came to a state budget about a month ago. So this is unprecedented, and unfortunately, when I turn on the news, I hear little bits and pieces, but I don't hear it nonstop. And it's really important for our community to all come together and say, hey, you know what, these nonprofits, and I can tell you, I was a partner in a law firm on LaSalle Street. I did in government, and working with my colleagues now in the nonprofit sector, and I'll tell you something, they're not paid, as well as people in both private sector and government, and they're working their asses off. And that's what I'm really afraid about, is that this sector is going to completely break down and be irreparable harm. And then what's our community going to do about it? It's going to end up costing our citizens a lot more in the long run. So that's my concern. Yes?
So to the extent that your organization services a diverse set of communities, how do you see the sort of needs of those different communities differing from one another? And I guess how do you see the focus of your organization differing from similar groups that serve, say, the Black or Hispanic community?
Sure. In some ways, we're sister agencies, right? So, for example, because of the state budget cuts, other agencies have decided to close down certain programs, and when they do, we all kind of talk to each other and say, hey, are you still offering citizenship? And so, for example, both the city and the state have cut the funding for my citizenship program, which means that I've got 2 employees who are BIA accredited. BIA is an accreditation from USCIS, so that they can like do limited immigration services for free or for a really low fee, right? And the reason why USCIS allows this is that the immigrants that some immigrants want to be naturalized and become U.S. citizens, but they can't afford it. They can't afford to pay for a law firm. And so I've got 2 employees who, Lily, my lead, regularly gets poached by immigration law firms, and she's been poached for years. People try to like hire her, and they want to hire her to be a paralegal at their law firm, and she's always said no, even though she can make more money, because she really loves doing what she's doing, helping people who can't afford to become citizens, right? And because of the budget cuts to the city and state, other agencies have dropped their citizenship department entirely, and I decided to keep our 2 employees because to me, it's our core competency. And so I'm literally eating into the equity, the limited equity of my agency. And so it's a business decision that I'm making with my board of directors and my finance committee for my board. We have at least a conference call or a meeting, in-person meeting every 2 weeks. That we've been doing this since July of last year, and we're trying to discuss like what is a doomsday scenario, right? And that's the fear, is that all of us are trying to figure out, well, how to get that. So part of it is that there's a sister agency type aspect to how do we distinguish ourselves from other groups that are like black or politically black agencies or Hispanic agencies. And
May I have your attention, please?
sure.
A fire has been reported in another area of the building. You are in a safe area. Please stay in your work area and await further instructions. Do not use the elevators. May I have your attention, please? A fire has been reported in another area of the building. You are in a
It's
safe
like,
area.
I've never heard that one.
Please
Fire?
stay in your work area and
what did you say
await
to
further
them?
instructions. Do not use the elevators.
So to answer your question, like, so for example, there's a lot of organizations that are not even ethnic, right? So like Easter Seals or Catholic Charities, and we're all trying to help the community. Why I thought it was important was because how can we do something, and like to me it was important to create an organization that embraces the Asian ethnic aspect, or at least have some aspect of it. So while our agency serves black, white, Hispanic, Asian in all of our different departments, and so whether it's our team mentoring, whether it's our seniors, we have people from all walks of life. What we do unique is, like, for example, our youth program, we teach our kids Vietnamese dances, Filipino ethnic dances. It's kind of funny because then all the elected officials know that now, and so they keep asking us to have our kids perform at like events like this. And so they're always at like the Thompson Center or whatever performing. But we also try to do things in terms of civic engagement, and that's what I think that the nonprofit community across the board, Asian, black, white, Hispanic, hasn't done as much of. Is that we were always just trying to help people, but we haven't really like talked about the importance of civic engagement. So like every election cycle, all of our kids, K through 12, that are involved in our programs, we have a mock election. We, in fact, Hillary Clinton and John Kasich were the winners of our presidential mock election, and we had the kids learning the issues. And to me, if we have all of our kids K through 8, they're voting every single time as a mock election. By the time they're adults, it's gonna be habitual for them to do that, and to know that that's part of their identity to do that, and not like, oh, it's not for me. So that's one example of what we do. But we also, because of the limited English that many folks from immigrant countries have, is that my staff speaks over 20 languages, and so when we're hiring someone, we're actively like, oh, this person speaks Arabic or Hindi, and so that's maybe outweighs why we should hire this other person, right? So that's something that's also being able to just communicate with folks, because for a lot of immigrants that are limited English speaking, they don't have access to the world. They don't know what's going on television. They don't know that they may be entitled to a certain right or benefit when they're injured or otherwise, right? So it's important to be able to give them that access, and that's something that I think is important for organizations like mine to be able to do. So, any other questions for? Thank you, everybody.
I have to say, the CPA tracker system is way more sophisticated than the fire system, which was this, right? Thanks for what you do. Thank you for me.
Thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you again for everyone to come out and help celebrate our Heritage Month. Thanks, Dennis, so much for taking the time, and thanks to Lily, and thanks for all of you for spending time with us. This concludes our program for today. Please grab some snacks at the back table on your way out, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Take steps.
Hey Ray, what's
That's still my prospect. I know.